Hello, and welcome to episode 20, the Double edition of Notes from the Aisle Seat, the podcast that covers the arts in northern Chautauqua County, sponsored by the 1891 Fredonia Opera House. My name is Tom Laughlin, and I'm your host as we bring you news and information about arts events at the Opera House and around the region, including interviews with artists and creators across the county. This 20th edition of the podcast, featuring two great guests, is being released on 6/22/2022. That's a lot of twos, and hence the title, the Double edition. The summer solstice will have occurred the day before this podcast is released, on the 21st of June, and so the two waxing seasons, winter and spring, have come and gone, and the two waning seasons, summer and fall, now take center stage. Summer is a sneaky season. The fullness of warmth and growth fills us with a sense of life's richness. But lurking behind all that rich life is the reality that the days now begin to grow shorter. And sooner than we'd like, or realize, the days will grow cooler and shorter as fall and winter make their inevitable approach. The best approach is to get out there in the sunshine, soak up all the vitamin D that you can, and make enough warm memories to last the entire winter. My first guest is someone who knows these seasons intimately, and you can tell when you experience her work that the seasonal cycle has been the greatest influence on her growth as a visual artist. Sara Baker Michalak has been creating art in the northern Chautauqua region for many years now, working in fiber, wood, and now mixed media. And I had a chance to talk to her about how her career got started and where she's at today in her artistic journey. It's very, very exciting to have with me on the podcast right now one of the region's most interesting visual artists, an old friend of mine, Sara Baker Michalak. Sara, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Tom. I'm thrilled to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you. I'm so glad I ran into you on the 1891 run for the Opera House and got you to commit to this because I've been looking forward to it, and with the summer being slow, not a lot of events going on at the Opera House, it's great to have artists like you to be able to interview, and then people can get a little deeper a deeper look into the various kinds of artists we do have in the northern part of the county. There's a lot of them. So why don't we start and have you give us a little background about your artistic journey? When did you become interested in art? How did you become interested? And what was your progress through becoming the artist you are today?
Okay. I went into liberal arts in college. Very soon after entering my freshman year, realized that I wanted to be much more specific about my journey. And I made friends in the art department where I was in Syracuse University. And we kind of fast forwarded to wanting to get into a much more targeted art program. And we ended up going to RIT in Rochester. They have a school there called the School for American Crafts, which is a bachelor's program that does go on and offer a master's in the four major craft areas of textiles, metal, glass, and wood. So we went there, two friends and I went there together, and one and I lasted until the bitter end, 4 years later. And I was a weaving and textile major there. and got my degree in textile design. So when I got out of school, I started to operate in my own studio back in Westfield after a jaunt in New Jersey as an artist in residence in public schools there. And soon realized I was going to need to augment my meager artist's income doing other things. So at that point in time, there were lots of opportunities for working artists, primarily offered through our County Arts Council and the State New York Council on the Arts. So I did a lot of artist in residence work in public schools. And in the course of doing that, I broadened my media beyond fiber. I was working in cahoots with other disciplines, primarily in elementary schools. The social studies program, where I was integrating art programs with art projects in the countries, for instance, they were studying. I did kite making in conjunction with Asian studies. I got involved in science programs. We did paper making to illustrate the really the technical aspects of paper making, plant harvesting, fiber processing. And so over the course of those years, it became a blending of disciplines for me as far as creative expression. When I met my husband to be, and we had our son, I became even more diversified, adding the role of mother.
Right.
And the play groups and the lovely art projects that we all did together.
I remember
So
those well. Yes, they were
you
fun.
do. You were integrally involved. Your lovely family was such a major part of those years. So many, many fond memories. So fast forward again, after our son left home, I got back to art full time. After working for Aspire of Western New York, I taught art to folks with developmental disabilities for about 10 years. So lots of different background that's all been extremely educational and enriching for what I'm doing now, which is mixed media with lots of texture. So that's where the fiber comes back in. But I do primarily mixed media work. It's focused on art and the natural world. There's a lot of art and science. I'm active with groups and exhibitions promoting awareness of climate change, integrating my strong interest in diversified habitats with my artwork now.
Oh, that's great. I'm going to ask you a little bit more about that in just a minute, but I'm going to backtrack just a tad and perhaps try and get you to talk a little bit about what it is about fiber and the feeling of working with fiber that interested you so much.
Well, I think at the time, which I think is true in other cases too, when we're young, I went to it sort of intuitively. It was a passion. I didn't have it worked out in my mind as to who, what, why, and when, but my mother was very creative. She was an amazing knitter and she painted. She did a lot of creative things. One of my two brothers was an artist. He was a painter. I was the youngest of three children. So I had a lot of influence in my family. I was surrounded by creative people and grew up in the natural world, which is probably the strongest single influence in my life. So of course, the natural world is filled with textures and depth and layers. I'm looking out the window now of my studio and seeing leaves and branches and light playing with the dark, and all layered with imagery and light and dark and texture. So yeah, I grew up in an environment that invited deep 3D involvement, and that's what textiles are. They are sensuous. You manipulate them, they're flexible. So the first tapestries that I made often incorporated natural materials. And if they did not incorporate natural materials, I worked with creating illusion through various artist techniques that suggested the texture and the interlacing and the interwoven aspect of the real world.
That's great. I really do like that layering feature that you're talking about. I know
Mhm.
your studio, you live right off Canada Way Creek, and that view and that whole natural world process that just keeps going in its cycle year after year must be incredibly inspirational to you.
It is inspirational, Tom. It's inspirational on a micro level. There's never a dull moment on the creek. It's water and rocks and birds and all kinds of four-legged critters. It's weather. It's the time of day. There's never a moment the same. Yet it is so sustaining on other levels too. It's whoever said 190 million centuries ago, the river is never the same way twice as the water passes, but of course it's always the same because it just flows on and on. So the creek and the riverine environment here, the trees, the wildflowers, the light that comes and goes through branches and leaves is very sustaining on a conceptual level and really, really inspires my sketchbook work that carries on in through the creation of objects to share with others.
I noticed. Now let's talk a little bit about your recent work. The stuff you seem to be doing specifically right now. I noticed you had a couple of solo exhibitions, one in Warren, Pennsylvania, and another one up in the Adirondacks at Old Forge. And as I sort of peruse your website and look at the work that you're doing, it's certainly, I mean, for someone like me. It has an incredible subtlety to it. It's not, you know, the hues and colors tend to be very almost pastel-like, but at the same time, um, the word that you use in what I assume to be your artist statement is ephemerality, which I
Mhm.
love that word.
Mhm.
I think it's great. Can you elucidate on that a little bit?
I I I can. It's a wonderful word, isn't it?
Yes, yes, it is. I read that and I went, man, when I look at her work and I connect that to the word ephemerality, it's a perfect blend.
Well, thank you. I believe it came from day one and has developed from there. Again, that deep involvement with nature, the just the glorious and blessed family life I led with all the questions we have about our upbringing and our families. I look back and I see a thread. There you go.
Hmm.
Many threads that got me to this point. And I think as we get older, also, we see that our history gets longer and longer and longer, and there are those threads. But alas, so much changes. It is ephemeral. Experience remains as memory, but um, the past is done. Those days are gone. So I think as an artist and a writer a little bit, um, I look for those threads that carry us through. And in order to find the truest threads, I have to deal very directly with the ephemerality of it all. I think as we get older, many of us will agree, we're aware of more that's going than what is staying.
That's you got that right, Sarah.
Isn't that something? I didn't invent that, Tom.
No, no, you didn't invent it, but interestingly enough, when the awareness comes to you, it's rather striking in its um appearance in a way that there's more behind you than there is ahead of you, and the sense of your own personal sense of ephemerality really begins to hit home.
It does. And I think there are, it's like the, not exactly, but the seven stages of grief.
Uh-huh. Yes. Uh-huh.
Maybe the seven stages of ephemerality are,
Well, in
oh
my
no. The first one is, oh no. The second one is, okay, I don't have much choice here. The
uh-huh.
third stage might be, oh, there's something's remaining. Maybe this is the first time I've done this, Tom. So
Oh,
maybe the fourth stage is, all right, as things are going, those are curtains that are parting.
mhm.
Then maybe the fifth stage is, now the curtains are parted. What's there?
Mhm.
So, okay, I am now at the point where I am seeing, or trying to see, trying to discern what's there,
Mhm.
what's here. So when you look at my work and the word layers is applies well, I think. I'm parting the curtains and seeing what's gone and seeing what remains. And at times it's murky. At other times there's a minimal structure that's rather celestial,
Mhm.
and kind of everything in between. I am minimal with color. I am minimal with line because I kind of believe that what's revealed is revealed in an environment of simplicity. What's revealed to me that's of worth looking for,
Mhm.
I tend towards the world of simplicity, as so many do.
Yeah. And I think that's an excellent way to go. I mean, again, the thing that strikes me so much about your work when I see it is, their shapes, form, line, depth, color, and yet at the same time, the abstract quality of it doesn't necessarily give me, a feeling of a concrete object, but rather more of a mood or of an ephemeral feeling that seems to be evoked from the way that you apply your media to canvas.
Right. And that brings me right back to one of your earlier questions regarding the solo exhibitions of recent.
Mhm.
At the Crary Art Gallery in Warren was a fabulous opportunity. They are an amazing group of volunteers who run the Crary Art Gallery, open to proposals from all artists of the region. I would strongly encourage anyone who's interested in a solo show or a group show. Sometimes they pair an artist with another, and they have 6 to 8 to 10 shows a year, and it's just a fabulous group to work with. And you might not have thought of the Warren, Pennsylvania area to consider as an opportunity for exhibition, but I'll tell you, my visitors were an entirely new crowd to my work, so it was just a great opportunity. But what reminded me of that show and your question, your comments, was the artist statement. I worked for that show, and the show was called Metaphysical, capital M, capital P, one word, Metaphysical. And it was about the work is very similar to the work I'm currently doing. But the way I kind of framed it with words was to talk about this ephemerality. And it's the metaphysical aspect is representing my work is about physical nature. It's about the materials around us, but it's just as much or more about the processes that animate nature. So it's the meta, it's the form, the shapes, the colors, the textures, the depth. And also, well, that's the physical.
Mhm.
And the meta is the spirit that animates nature. It's what makes it change, seasonal change, the birth to maturation, to death, and then to rebirth. So when you look at my work, you're very perceptive to see that there are objects there or reminiscences of objects. But what you experience at least as much or sometimes more in many of my works is the fluid forces within the natural world. It's the change, but it's not only the change that's ephemeral, it's the change that takes nature and takes us right through our cycle, but then into regeneration. Because as we've learned very wonderfully from our region's hardships of winter, always comes a spring. And we can be deeply heartened by that there's this cycle that we can rely on within the 12 months of great highs and sometimes great lows. But it comes around again.
Oh, yes, and thank goodness for that, right?
Oh, you got it.
Oh man, I'm always so grateful for those moments.
And it's always new, isn't it? Every
It's
spring.
every spring. It always feels new, and it always feels refreshing too, in a lot of different ways. So it's so wonderful. And then when it comes back to the winter, it's like, okay, let's huddle in for a while and regroup, and then come back out next time.
Yeah, and there's a time for everything.
And there is.
Yeah.
Um, I'm going to ask you just to change the subject a little, not too much, but just a little. You have projects called public art interventions. Can, can you describe those a little bit for us?
I can. As many things have been and continue to be, when COVID hit, I went into an ever deeper state of introspection, as so many of us did, dealing with the changes, the stresses, the challenges. One thing that we all had to deal with was closures and dramatic changes in schedule. One example was the show that I had at the Crary in Warren was canceled. And then it just went on from there. All venues of sharing the artwork were closed, shops, galleries, openings. Of course, none of that was happening. We were as isolated as everybody else was. And so I responded by thinking about the options. And I'd always been really entertained and thrilled about public art projects. I don't do a lot of work with major public art projects. Murals and things on buildings are primarily painted by people who, if they've gotten that far, are extremely accomplished and have an infrastructure to facilitate that whole process. But I've also got a strong undercurrent of wanting to work a little bit on the backside of things.
Okay.
I like to break the rules. I like to work outside the box. My mixed media work is maybe sometimes a little bit paint, but it's a lot of things that I find. It's a lot of ephemera, old paper that I find. I recycle a lot. I reuse a lot, and that comes into my work now very overtly. With climate change, I'm very into reducing my carbon footprint, so I do a lot of reuse. But in regard to the public art intervention, I got involved with a group of people. Again, due to COVID, I got very engaged with a group of collagists over Instagram, working worldwide. And we call ourselves the collagistas.
Oh, wow. The collagistas. I love that. That's a great term.
Oh, this is one great group of women. One great group of women, most of who work underground. And we work with putting up basically collage graffiti. It's collage graffiti. And it has many iterations. It can be on walls. It can be 3D objects that are set on railings. It can be works in the forest on tree trunks. It can be, goes on from there. But primarily the idea is it's not precious. It's not gallery material. It breaks the rules of art is expensive and art is for an exclusive audience. This kind of art is for everybody to make. There are many, many people in our group who are not professional, so to speak, and they make the most enlightened, freest, most delightful work of anyone. So it's really art outside the box, and on my website are just a few examples of the postings I've done really in the public. Some are on the sides of gas tanks and trucks and other graffiti walls. There's a graffiti wall, and of course I can't, because the collagistas are anonymous, tell you where these places are. It's just to be discovered and happened upon, and probably disapproved of by many, many people, that no one should be doing that. No one should be defacing, but it's in fun, and it's just a delightful, delightful experience.
You know, I have to, this is very funny, Sarah. Because again, I'm looking at your website, and the reason it's funny is because all of a sudden I have pulled up a picture, and I guess I'm not supposed to say where it is, but I'm looking at it, and it is nearby a place where quite frequently I go to take walks, and I've seen it any number of times. And,
Good.
and all of a sudden I'm looking at it going, I've seen that one. I know exactly where that is.
Oh, that's fabulous. I'm always wondering if it's ever going to come back to me.
Yes, yes. Well, one just came back to you now, because I can tell,
And I do much of it out of town because, as you know, we live in a small town, and
right.
We're supposed to be, I mean, most of this is legal.
Yes.
But once in a while, I mean, if somebody was in a really bad place and they chose to complain.
Yes.
I'm not into offending anyone, but I suppose that some people might be unhappy about some of this, but it's not, I never intend to offend. I do intend to raise eyebrows, and I do intend for people to notice things maybe they never noticed before. So it's a little bit of an experiment on awareness.
Yes. Yes, I can see that, and I think that you know, the other ones that I see on your website are also, there's a couple others I think I know where they are, but some of them I'm not quite sure. But I just looked at that one. I went, oh man, I know exactly where that is, and I can't tell you how many times I've passed it.
Well, it's not going to be completely anonymous. Well, the location will be anonymous of two particularly I'm thinking about. But they've just been published in a book by Collage Magazine, KOLAJ, which is another group of public art intervention collagists I'm involved with. But Collage, KOLAJ, is this magazine, and they have sponsored challenges for people to go out and, again, not to really be nasty, but to really, it's all about waking up, shaking up a little bit the status quo. And collage artists tend to definitely work outside the box. They're questioning the gatekeepers of the art world, and the work is just incredibly exciting, much of it.
Yes, and you know, as I look at the work, it's like I would have to agree with you. I mean, I don't see any of these. And as a matter of fact, most of the pieces that I see on your website, and I'm going to link your website obviously on the show notes. But
thank you.
You're welcome. Most of the pieces that I see actually make the location far more attractive.
Oh, well, that's kind. I'm not a social activist as much as, for instance, a number of my interventions have happened to be temporary, and I will enhance or work with the energy of the place, and then the work is intended to not last. And that's the other thing about this public art intervention. It's not archival. It's not going to last forever. The elements are going to affect it. And in my case, that's a good thing, because I work with the elements. I accept and honor the elements of the natural world. So a number of things I've done are very small. I may be the one and only person that ever knows about them. For instance, maybe there's a stone along the creek with a special collage that I've created in honor of the Creek goddesses. And high water will take that and take it away. So that's a little bit of my public art intervention is definitely an in-your-face thing in some senses, but it's also a very, very fancy excuse for me to go outside yet again, which is really the place I want to be all the time, regardless of the weather.
Sara, let me ask you one final question before we go. What are you working on now? Have you got anything coming up in the future? Let the listeners know what they might be able to experience.
I do indeed. I have two things to share with people. I have a lot of current work in a gallery that's just moved to Jamestown from Lakewood, and it's the Chautauqua Art Gallery. It's run by Leslie Calamari, who herself is an amazing watercolorist. She represents a number of regional artists, and she is in a fabulous old building and has largely expanded her gallery. It's on North Main Street, and she's just had a grand reopening there. So I've got a number of works there, small to large, and I'm preparing a very special series of work as we speak for a gallery in Westfield, which is my hometown. The gallery is called Living Glass, and the proprietress there is a retired art teacher who is an artist in glass herself, and her name is Denise Williams. And I'm going to be a featured artist there in the month of August. We're going to be having an opening the first Friday of August, and that is August 5th. I'm looking at my calendar.
August 5th.
Westfield has a great series of old-fashioned First Fridays in the summertime when they open up all the shops and have all kinds of special events. So Denise has a First Friday opening every month. I'm creating a very special series of small works that are very positive. You and I have talked a lot about things that raise eyebrows and all that business. I'm preparing these works for Living Glass show. They're small, they're 8-inch square collages, and they celebrate nature. They celebrate how nature is whole, that we can always go back to nature. The nature of my childhood was in Westfield. And the show is called Sanctuary. I did a little write-up for this. And I think if people want to stop by either on First Friday, August 5th, or throughout the month of August, they might enjoy it and see all the other things that Denise has in her shop as well.
That's wonderful. Great. I'm glad to hear that you've got something going on that people can see, because I have the great good fortune, right now of being able to see you in your studio during Zoom, and the wonderful background is terrific. And not only that, Sara, not only that, but you have been able to provide this incredible background of bird song that I could never add as a track to the background of this interview. And it's wonderful. It's wonderful. I love it.
I'm so thrilled you're enjoying that. You didn't realize you could hear it. Good for you.
I can, and I think the listeners should be able to hear it too. But it's just, it's beautiful. It's wonderful to be able to have that sound in the background while we're talking.
Thank you.
It's almost like I'm right there.
Well, you are in spirit, Tom. Have been and will be, I'm hoping.
Oh, yes. Okay. Well, Sara Baker Michalak, thank you so much for the time you've given me on this interview. It's been wonderful talking with you as always, and I am glad to have this opportunity. I knew the minute I saw you at the run, I said, oh, she is somebody that has to appear in the podcast, because your artwork for so many years has graced the region. And, on behalf of the listeners, I want to thank you for that, all the work you put in, make the region a better place.
Thank you so much, Tom.
You're welcome, Sara. I hope to see you soon in person.
Absolutely.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Sara's work can be seen in a few locations in the region. She has her own website at sarabakermichalakart.com. Her work is on display and for sale at chautauquaartgallery.com. And don't forget that August 5th, First Friday exhibition at Living Glass Gallery on Main Street in Westfield. You can check the show notes on our website, aisleseat.podbean.com, for web links. The local arts calendar is pretty empty in the region right now, but there are still a few things worth mentioning. If you're interested in the Main Street Studios Drama Playground camps for the season, be sure to check out their website for registration information for their 5 sessions at mainstreetstudios.org. The City of Dunkirk and the Village of Fredonia have their schedules of summer festivals and events listed on their respective websites as well, so be sure to check those out. The Chautauqua Institute has opened for its summer season, and they have an abundance of information about their myriad events at www.chq.org. And lastly, Shakespeare in Delaware Park, the region's summer Shakespeare festival, will open after a 2-year hiatus on Thursday, June 23rd, with a production of As You Like It, running until July 17th. The second show, A Midsummer Night's Dream, will run from July 28th through August 21st. This festival is celebrating its 47th season on Shakespeare Hill in Delaware Park in Buffalo. More information can be found at www.shakespeareinDelawarePark.org. Speaking of theater in Buffalo, one of the region's most well-known actors makes her home in northern Chautauqua County. You've probably seen her on regional commercials, or perhaps have taken in one of her local one-woman shows in the past. Tina Rausa, who has now found a local artistic home at Westfield's Lakeshore Center for the Arts as the president of the board and resident director, recently directed a production of Becky's New Car, which we covered back in episode 17. That show is being remounted the last weekend in June, as COVID unfortunately forced the cancellation of the original second weekend. I wanted to get a deeper insight into Tina's career as a working actor in Buffalo and see what her plans might be for the Lakeshore Center for the Arts. Well, I know this particular interview is going to be a joy to conduct because I have with me Christina Rausa, otherwise known as Tina Rausa, and she is one of my oldest acquaintances actually here in the Dunkirk, Fredonia area. She's a local artist who has worked in Buffalo, in many of the stages in Buffalo. So welcome, Tina.
Thank you, Tom, very much. Pleased to be here.
Yeah, so let's get started with the usual first question on these things. How did you get started? I mean, what drove you into the theater? What was your initial spark that says I have to be on the stage?
Well, I think two things. This is going to be funny. I don't think I've ever told anybody this, but the first thing is I grew up in a college town, a small college town, and the only thing that we could do would be to go to the university, Colgate University, for entertainment, and they had a theater there. And I remember, I think this is where it took place. It might have been the high school, but anyway, we had a Gilbert and Sullivan group, and they did Gilbert and Sullivan, and I just thought, oh, I didn't necessarily want to sing or dance, but I thought I really like that. And then I remember watching on television My Three Sons.
Huh.
Now you're the first person I'm telling this. And I said to myself, I remember after I'd seen that, I was up in my room and I said to myself, I was very young, maybe, I don't think it was in like fourth grade. I think it was like second or third grade. I thought, I want to be an actor. And that was it. I never wanted to do anything else. And I decided I was going to do it. And Fredonia State looked great at the time for theater. And my mom, the only thing my mother said to me was, honey, don't you think you might want to go to a community college to make sure this is what you want? I said, no, I know what I want. So that's that.
Oh, parents are always like that. You know, they always are. The minute you indicate an interest in theater, parents have always got, you know, even I did, even with my son, my youngest son, Eric, he's always wanted to be an actor. And I was the same as Eric, don't you want to think about this? Doesn't matter.
Don't you see what I go through?
Yeah. See, exactly, right? Exactly. So you are a graduate of Fredonia State, and you also came to teach for a while as an adjunct, teaching acting classes over at the college.
20 years.
20 years, yeah. How did you enjoy that?
Oh, I absolutely loved it. I didn't like the lecturing. That was tough because sometimes I had 100 kids, or was it over? Yeah, I think I had 100 kids sometimes teaching, you know, courses that to me weren't appropriate for all those ages, because there were people, a lot of experience, no experience. And but I enjoyed the students very much. And when I finally figured out how to engage them, I always thought, oh, I'm not experienced enough. I don't have enough anecdotes. But anyway, yes, I absolutely loved it. I love the students. I love it.
So let's go all the way back. Now, you and I, of course, are both involved with the theater scene in Buffalo for over 30 years now. And I'd love to know how you first got yourself into the city and noticed, and what your journey was through there.
Sure. Well, Steve Cooper at the time was also a graduate of Fredonia. He was a few years older than me. He was in Mary McDonald's class in that era. Mm-hmm. And I called him the minute I moved back to Fredonia, and I said, Steve, what do I want to make some commercials. You know, I want to be working in the industry. And he gave me a lot of information about where to go and blah, blah, blah. So that started me working in commercials and doing voiceovers, et cetera. Mm-hmm. Then it was a very vibrant scene at the time in Buffalo. And then Fred Keller, I got a good education at Fredonia. I was told, you got to keep studying. This isn't the end. You got to keep studying. And if you don't have work, you got to make work for yourself. So this man, Fred Keller, was giving acting classes. And so I went up to take acting classes. And then I brought him, because I always do these things. I said, Fred, if I got a group together, would you come to Fredonia to teach? So, you know, that's how I worked that out. So anyway, I attended his classes, and we ended up we did Educating Rita. He said, you know, I really think you're wonderful. Let's do something together. And from that, we started a theater company, which was never what I really wanted to do at that point in my career. I mean, now it's exciting. And so, you know, it's kind of 7 years of why am I doing this? But I did a lot of work. I got and he was a very excellent teacher. He was wonderful. And when he directed me in the Belle of Amherst, I think it was the first, after Educating Rita, that man would not let me get past the first 3 lines until I really understood what I was doing. It was the best lesson ever. Nope, you're not ready to go farther yet. It took us probably 3 weeks to get down the first act. And then the second act went fast. Yeah. We had a long rehearsal period. But
I actually remember watching you and Fred perform in the 1891 Fredonia Opera House many years ago in a Shakespeare production of some sort.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Of course, that was his milieu. And I've never had an opportunity to do a lot of Shakespeare because I always had summer jobs and although I've had the honor of being asked to audition, I couldn't do it. So that's how I envy you a little, because I feel, that's a big part of the theater that I have missed out on. So, but then, I love it and enjoy singing it. So.
Well, I
Yeah.
always feel I missed a lot of summer jobs because I was always doing Shakespeare. So I don't know which way you I don't know which way I don't know which way you want to go with that.
Yeah.
Well, your career has blossomed in interesting ways. I'm going to take just one of them right now, and that is certainly in Buffalo. People don't know around here in northern Chautauqua County. You have a reputation for playing one-woman shows, and you have a reputation for playing very strong women. You've played Golda Meir, you've played Susan B. Anthony, you've played the one-woman show Rose twice at the Jewish Repertory Theater. How did that come about? Did people just see you in these roles, or did you cultivate this, or
Well, I think the Belle of Amherst started it all, and it's that you're capable. And a lot of actors don't want to attempt a one-person show. It's scary. But I've always believed in assaulting my comfort zone. So actually, this is how I started at Jewish Rep. I read Golda's Balcony, and I loved it. And I thought that there was, I won't get into the line, but there was a particular line in the play. I thought it was in the play. And I said, I have to do this play if I possibly can. So I called Saul, and or emailed him, and I said, if you ever are thinking of doing Golda's Balcony, please let me read for it. And he said, well, as a matter of fact, we're thinking of putting it on the list, not this year, but for next year. And I said, will you grant me an audition? And he said, sure, come down, read for it. And that's how I got that role. And then it went to Rose, and then it went to Amelia Earhart, but that wasn't a one-woman show. No, there were other people in it. And then Masterclass, which is not a one-woman show, but it's heavy, with Maria Callas is mostly in the play. But I had worked with great kids in that. So anyway, that's how it started.
Yeah, and you enjoy that, I take it, because I mean, it's like you said, it's challenging. Can you talk about some of the challenges of doing a one-person show?
It's lonely. It's really lonely, and you have, for one thing, and there's no safety net. We don't get cues in our ears yet. It's scary. And when you go up, you're kind of sunk for a few minutes. You can't look at somebody and say, save me. So, but I enjoy the challenge, and I enjoy performing. So whether I'm performing by myself or with other people, but I did crave, after a while, I really craved working with people. So I was very excited to get back into playing roles opposite people.
That's always, I feel the same way in a sense. I mean, I thrive on having other people on stage, because having those moments to react to in the moment is always so thrilling as an actor to do.
Yeah.
You are also a producer now, and you have is it let me see if I got this right, the Suitcase Theater Company, is that correct?
Yeah, Suitcase Production.
Yeah, talk about that a little bit.
Okay, well, that started years and years and years ago, and I did a lot of one-woman presentations. I was always asked by groups, would you do this, woman? Would you? So I would set up a scheme where I would research the character, and then I would come up with some interesting questions, and I would hand those questions to the audience, and they could ask me the questions, but I knew the answers, of course, because I'd studied it. So I did a lot of that. And then, how do I make this short? I was commissioned by a local women's group. It was like Chautauqua County Women's something, doesn't exist anymore, to do a 15-minute piece on Susan B. Anthony. And I said to them, well, I'm not a writer really. And then they begged and begged. And I said, well, what will you do for me? Well, we don't have a lot of money. I go, I know, but what will you do for me? And that went on for a month. And finally, I can't remember her name, but she came back to me and she said, well, we can give you $200. And I said, well, I'll tell you what, you can keep your $200 and get me a good loaf of bread, and then I'll do it for you.
Ooh.
Because all I wanted them to realize was, this is going to take me a long time. I mean, it took me a month to write 15 minutes. But then, to make a long story short, the League of Women Voters caught the scent of it and said, can you put this into a 25-minute presentation for our big meeting? And then I was asked to do it on the state level, expand it. And then they wrote a grant so that I could do it in the schools for a 45-minute production. And that's how it built. And then I also marketed it to interesting groups that might want to put it on. And then, of course, the celebration of the centennial of women's right to vote. I went to Pittsburgh, Cleveland. I went all over. I did it all over, in the East Coast, all the way down to, I don't know, Albany, Syracuse, Utica. So I got a lot of mileage out of it, but that all comes out from being taught. You got to have one in your back pocket if you want to make sure you can work. And so that was my play in my back pocket.
That's very smart too. It's one thing I don't think I developed one person show with multimedia that was based off a book by Jim Davis, who was on the musicology faculty. And, I did it twice, and I really enjoyed it, but I've never really had I don't know what you want to call it. It seems like every time I thought about a one-person show and tried to do a one-person show, it just seems so daunting to me. You got any tips?
Don't do it. Don't. Tom, you've had wonderful roles. I mean, you have played magnificent roles. So just stick with the roles.
Okay, I will. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Well, speaking. I know I had you on a couple of podcasts ago, maybe one or two podcasts ago, for Lakeshore Center for the Arts production of Becky's new play, of which you're the director, and I understand it's coming back for another weekend.
Yeah, well, I've blessed with a cast that's very excited to bring it back, and it is going to be the 24th, 25th, and 26th of June, and we're running a Friday night and two matinees, a matinee on Saturday and a matinee on Sunday.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good. And I'm interested to have you talk a little bit more about the Lakeshore Center for the Arts, because you are, now let me see if I got your title right. Are you president of the board? Is that correct? Or
I am president of the board. Yes.
Yes.
And absolutely delighted to have been elected into that office because I'm kind of the new kid on the block there, and they've been doing some marvelous work. They have done work for, oh my gosh, years before they even had the facility. But what I want to urge people to do is to go to the website, Lakeshore Center for the Arts, simple.com, because it is a phenomenal space. There's a performing arts theater. Okay, so there's a theater, the Jackie Phillips Theater. There's I believe it's Philip Ross Music Hall. Anyway, it's another performance space where musicians perform. Right. And that also doubles as a reception room, quiet room for actors between scenes. And then there's the Lorna Penny Suite, which is an absolutely beautifully appointed conference room that also doubles as a dressing room for the theater. But these are absolutely wonderful facilities. There's gallery space in the hallways and going up the stairs for local artists, emerging artists, and some established artists. But there's also a really interesting innovation studio, which is a digital arts studio for multimedia, for people to develop their website or to create a film or to digitally reproduce photographs. It's state-of-the-art equipment, and that's free to members to use, and if outside people can use it as well, but there's a fee. So I urge people to go to the website because this is a phenomenal facility. And it's the brainchild of Rick Mascaro. He's the artistic director, and he came back after a career in teaching and various other professions, and decided he wanted to come back to Westfield, and he wanted to start an art center, and he did it. It's fantastic.
And as you well know, because when I went to see a tech rehearsal for Becky's new car, and I was blown away by that theater. I had no idea it even existed. And then I saw kind of the rest of the space, and I didn't get in to see the digital studio, but I would love to. But how has that space managed to keep itself hidden for so long? I mean, I want people to know about it too, because it's in the region and it's wonderful.
Yeah, I was gobsmacked when I went up there, and I thought, wow, I wonder if I could get to know these people. And they are very, Rick is all about making it for the community. People are welcome to with their ideas and suggestions.
How long has it been in
Okay.
its space? Let's put it that way.
5 years. And then they did runouts. They made theater happen all over town before that. But 5 years, and you've got to take 2.5 years off of that because of the pandemic.
Well, that's probably why it's got a little bit of, it seemed hidden to me, because by the time it was just getting on its feet, then COVID hit and it's been down for 2 years, and now it's coming back. And I really do want people to know about that space, because like you, I walked into that theater and I went, whoa,
this is something else, isn't it?
This is something else. Yes. Yeah. And for looking for something to do regionally, I mean, what's really nice that's happening in the area, is we have Main Street Studios now in Fredonia, which is local. We've got the Lakeshore Center for the Arts in Westfield, which is now local, and I'm loving seeing all these local places pop up to have a little bit more of community arts program going on for the people who are interested in that. I think that's a really great thing.
Yeah, me too, because this is, community theater used to be very big around here. And as you know, it's just kind of waned, but it's waxing again everywhere. And I think the more experience let's talk about acting, the more experience you have with it, the better you become and familiar with the language, with the process. And so, that's what I'm hoping for. I'd like to also have a lecture series at Lakeshore Center for the Arts, one related to art, one related to Innovation Studio, one related to music, some such, And Westfield is a very, very welcoming community, and they participate. They participate in events. So it's a great spot to be in. I landed in a good spot.
You did land in a good spot. I mean, I think that's wonderful. And it hasn't stopped your career. I think you're going to be at the Jewish Repertory Theater next season. What are you doing?
Yeah, doing Barefoot in the Park. I'm pretty excited about it. I'm the mother.
You're the mother. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm not playing Corey.
Mom's a great role.
It is a great role. I've had so many actresses come up and tell me that's on my bucket list. I'm like, well, what can I say? Yeah, I'm very excited about that because, I am more of a Neil Simon fan than some people. I think that Neil Simon plays are so interesting because, they're funny, but they're poignant. And, there's so much more to them than just, let's go and laugh at Neil Simon. But
well, you probably went through the same Neil Simon revelation that I did. As when I was 22, Neil Simon was like, who he was a blah, 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 blah. And then all of a sudden I became 35, 37, 38. And then I became 42, 45. And all of a sudden Neil Simon just seemed to have so much more relevancy.
Yeah. I think because I was involved with before I was going up to Buffalo, but I hadn't quite got my teeth into it. I got involved with the DNF Players, and of course Neil Simon came up a lot then because it was known for community theater. But I mean, his plays are, I just read Chapter 2. This is Chapter 2, I think it's called, the Neil Simon play Chapter 2.
Yes,
it's great. It's really
great.
Good.
It's a very good play.
Love that piece. Do it.
Yeah. Well, I'm getting to the point where Neil Simon, I think most of his characters are probably in their 40s and 50s and such. Although I did get a chance to play, Oscar Madison.
Oh, you're fabulous.
And I thought I was too old for the role when they gave it to me, but who's going to turn that down, right? So
who did you play opposite? I saw it.
I played opposite Timmy Newell. Played
right. Yeah, it was great. It was just great. Well, you also did. Oh yeah, I saw at Jewish Rep. Right. Yeah, that was fantastic. That was fantastic. It was so good. Yeah, I just love all that stuff. What's
gonna come up? You got any more plans for Lakeshore in the fall too? Lakeshore Center for the Arts?
I'm thinking of. Do I dare say this? I shall. There's a Lee Blessing play called Going to St. Ives, and it's very complicated to describe, but it's a two-hander. I'd like to look at doing that. I have a couple people in mind because it's very specific roles, but you can look that up, folks. Going to St. Ives. And I'd like to do some play readings there, and they've done play readings in the past, and I think I'd like to do some play readings, but in the fashion of LA Theater Works. where, it's very well rehearsed. There are sound effects. I'd like to do a few things like that. But yeah, I want to continue to direct. I absolutely love it. I love directing.
I also see that, again, just very impressed by this. There is already on the Lakeshore Center for the Arts one act play festival.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Juicebox Organics too. I wouldn't want that to go unmentioned.
Well, I was hoping that maybe you would want to do a little feature with Rick, because
I will do that.
That's his baby. And, he's got all the details about that. Pretty exciting, big venture.
Yes.
And go for it, man.
Again, very impressive. Okay. Well, I'll have to make sure to get Rick in the fall and get him on here and talk to him about a little bit more about that place, because again, it seems like such the potential there is enormous. And
it is.
it's something I hope I can continue to cover. That's about it. That's about all I've got, Tina. Anything you want to wrap up with?
Well, no, but I do want to wrap up with this. Tom, people are very excited about this podcast.
Oh,
you're hitting a nerve out there. It's fantastic. But this podcast, are you doing stuff with people in Jamestown?
For the time being, I figured, well, let's get this going. Let's get some traction on this podcast and see how it works. And then perhaps at some point in time, we can bridge that gap between North and South.
Even if we're uniting Northern Chautauqua County.
Yes.
I think this one act play festival is exciting. I also think in the future, couldn't we have a fringe festival, but like an infringement festival? Because if we had the cooperation with the Opera House, now we've got the Main Street Theater, we've got this theater, the Patterson Library has a little performing area. We have two performance areas. Yes. So pie's the sky for me, and sometimes it turns out to be a cookie, but it's okay.
Well, let me put it to you this way. I mean, for me, it's always something that I've been terribly interested in, and in my last, years of teaching, it was always more interesting for me to see if I could get my students to work more locally than think constantly about going to New York. And I think that if we can work together to sort of bring that local flavor across this county, which has a lot of possibilities, I think, there's a lot there to consider. And I think that the seeds of that are growing now. And, I hope I get to see the fruits of it in 10 years if it continues to grow. But I certainly would like to be a part of that if it's possible.
Now you can direct, right?
Yes, I can. I can direct.
Come direct for us.
I would love to direct for you.
Okay, let's talk.
Okay, we will. Well, okay, we will.
All
right, wonderful, Tina. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time, and it's always good to talk to you, and always good. And at some point in time, we'll have to figure it out, because we've gone too many years without doing a show together. We're going to have to figure that one out before the end. So, yeah, we're at on Golden Pond point, Tina.
Thanks so much. I appreciate this. Thank you.
Bet.
It was a joy.
Bye-bye. If you didn't catch Becky's new car the first time around, be sure to check it out as it drives back around the corner. It's playing for 4 performances: on Friday, June 24th at 7:30, Saturday, June 25th at 2 p.m., and then again at 7:30 p.m., and on Sunday, June 26th at 2 p.m. Tickets are available on their website at lakeshorecenterforthearts.com or at the door. And that's it for this double edition of Notes from the Aisle Seat. My thanks to Ms. Sara Baker Michalak and Ms. Tina Rausa for being my doubly wonderful guests on this episode. Notes from the Aisle Seat is a production of the 1891 Fredonia Opera House in Fredonia, New York. For more information on any of the Opera House's events, call the box office at 716-679-1891, visit the website at www.fredopera.org, or email at operahouse@fredopera.org. Notes from the Aisle Seat is now available wherever you get your podcasts, including Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Amazon Music, and also on the Opera House YouTube channel. If you like this podcast, please consider following us by clicking the follow button on our website at aisleseat.podbean.com and spreading the word through your social media feeds. If you have an arts event you'd like featured on the podcast, why don't you drop us a line at operahouse@fredopera.org, and we'll see about featuring your event. Please try to give us a month's advance notice if possible to facilitate timely scheduling. Summer at the Opera House brings a slowing down of activity, with only a few events scheduled between now and September. The staff gets some vacation time, and even this podcast will be taking a summer break. Our next podcast will be the last one for this first season. We'll be back with Season 1's final edition of Notes from the Aisle Seat in 2 weeks on July 6th, 2022. I'm Tom Laughlin, and until then, be safe out there and be kind to one another.